Welcome back, everyone, to the Whiskey and Business Podcast. I'm Travis, as you know, and today we have two guests. One of them is the guest of the podcast. The other is a guest co-host.
Hello.
You may have seen him on the TBD Talks, which is our much less professional podcast. Our actual guest today, though, is Trever Treller.
Hello. I'm happy to be here.
Trevor, who are you?
Well, as it relates to this podcast, I suppose I'm the owner of Terroir Fine Wine in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. It's a small bottle shop, and although I say it myself, I think it's one of the most dynamic wine stores in the 5 counties of the panhandle of our beautiful state. Although I am a retail wine shop, I also hold weekly tastings on Thursday evening, and I conduct special events that happen throughout the year as well.
And seeing how we have a wine professional here, and I do know this is whiskey and business. There's still whiskey on the table.
Yes, there is.
We thought we'd mix it up a little bit, and Trevor could show us how he analyzes wine.
Oh, I'm on the spot.
On camera.
All right.
And then we'll also review the wine, what we think of it, and we'll be sipping whiskey later. But
okay.
This is going to be wine forward.
Yeah.
Is that like a wine?
Wine in business.
That term applies on several levels, actually.
Perfect.
Not least because we're starting with the wine.
Awesome.
Heck yeah.
So what wine did you bring?
So this is a wine called Pomum. It's a Washington state wine, appellated, meaning they source the fruit from Columbia Valley, which doesn't tell us a great deal since that's a large place. I suspect that much of this fruit is coming from Walla Walla. It's a Bordeaux-style blend in the 2019 vintage. It's predominantly Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, and Merlot. And we'll see what we think of this beautiful red wine.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Let's see, fellas.
Pardon my giant joke glass.
I love that novelty glass. Just have to make sure to not pour you half the bottle in it. There we go.
Will he get the same experience in this glass?
No.
Not quite as much as these Riedel stems, which are properly shaped, and a great deal of science and research went into their manufacture. But I have seen wine glasses shaped far, far worse than that as well. So the wine will show or smell and taste fairly good out of a glass like that, where if you were to drink it out of a cylindrical tumbler or any kind of a non-wine glass, as crazy as it might sound, if you are unfamiliar with it, it would actually make the wine smell and taste worse. The esters of the wine or some of the aromatic compounds are funneled up through the bevel of this glass here into your olfactory system. It even delivers the wine onto your palate in a particular place. This is a universal Riedel glass, but it's as good as any for general Bordeaux style or Cabernet glasses, you could ask.
Let's move that wine so it's not covering your face.
Okay, we'll move it out.
And so you've poured a glass of wine here. How do you smell it? Walk us through.
We're doing some fundamentals here.
Wine things, like people get excited about wine.
All right, well, let's talk about some rudiments of wine appreciation. In the industry, we say there are the 6 S's of initial wine appreciation, and they are to see, you're going to look at it, hold it away from you at about a 30-degree angle, particularly against a white background, and you'll note the color. You'll note the meniscus and fading toward the rim, if applicable, and several other things, including cloudiness that might indicate whether the wine is aged or unfiltered or a natural wine in any sense, and several other things. So you see, swirl, that's the second S. Now you're releasing the esters of the wine. Smell. I put the glass to the lips of my mouth and the 12 o'clock of the same glass to the bridge of my nose. Really get your nose in there. Inhale deeply of the wine. So see, swirl, smell, and then in rapid succession, not too rapid, but sip, savor, and summarize. So, fellas, let's sip. All right. Think about it, savor. And in summary, I would say this wine, although it's a 19 and has a little bit of age on it, it is tight, meaning the tannins are in need of breathing a little bit. Oxygen is an enemy of wine, believe it or not, but it seems like a friend for the first several hours after a wine is opened as it breathes and becomes more of itself and fleshes out its flavors and its aromatic compounds. But for now, it's a little tight. You could use some breathing, so we're going to swirl to hasten that process a little bit. Red wine can throw 1, 2, or 3 of, generally speaking, red, black, or blue fruit notes. I'm getting mostly black fruit in this with a little bit of red fruit. It can throw earth notes. It can throw mineral notes. It can throw herb and spice notes. So we'll just really quickly see what we can nail down in this wine. And as it fleshes out, we'll do more as the day progresses.
My palate's already kind of shot. I had brushed my teeth before I came.
The mark of a rank amateur.
I mean, fair enough.
Damn.
Trust me, no one wanted to
catching
smell
it
how
today, aren't
I
you?
was. I am.
He slept in, is my suspicion.
He's on his way over here.
I literally woke up.
I brought a joke
Yeah,
wine
I knew
glass.
you slept in.
He's telling me I brought a joke wine glass. I'm like, that's okay. That fits your personality. He's
And it's like, damn.
That's fun. Well, I will say that I washed these in a dishwashing machine, and then I stored them in a cardboard box meant to be brought back to my shop and placed there to air out a little bit more. So there is a little bit of an objectionable note in these glasses that if it persisted, I would have cleaned out with a little bit of white vinegar and then rinsed them again. But right now it's almost suggestive of a distant, vague, wet dog smell. Fellas, my apologies for that.
No,
as we
actually,
drink,
like I kind of see.
yeah, as we drink through this
Us too.
first pour, that will largely disappear as the wine rinses the glass of whatever residue was in there that caused that. We will then drink the wet dog, and when I pour again, we'll be wet dogless.
It's,
I do prefer my wine to not have wet dog notes.
So I think we all do.
So, Trevor, I've been wanting to have you on the podcast for quite some time because you own a business that is very unique. I mean, you know, there are some wine shops out there and stuff, but the amount of passion that you have for wine, for the whole industry it's admirable. So, part of what this episode will be about will be you've worked as a sommelier before for somebody else,
Somebody else, yes.
and then now you own your own shop. And I know that some of the satisfaction of like getting into video and doing that and working for another person was fine, okay, but having it be your skin on the line and having it be something that is yours is a huge, huge deal. So I want to go over that and also what a sommelier is and like more about the world of wine. So that's kind of what we're going to be covering. We're going to be drinking wine and talking wine and talking about business because
I love it.
Wine, whiskey, and business. It's a
Well,
wonderful
oh, yeah.
pairing.
You know, I would say that this would apply generally to almost any field you could name, but there is easy up front and difficulty later, which is the choice many humans tend to make for understandable reasons. And then there's difficult up front and great ease that then follows because of the initial sacrifice. You've seen it depicted sometimes as the easy path being slightly rising and then dipping and winding up no higher than you began, or the difficult path that goes down first before you start clambering back up a precipice and suddenly you're much, much higher than you ever began through the sweat of your brow and blood, sweat, and tears and the rest of it. So I bring this up because it would have been easy in the beginning, in the interim even, to remain running wine programs for other people, working for other restaurants, doing whatever it is that I've done over my long years in the industry. But it was a thing that at first did not seem like a blessing, that proved to be a very large blessing in disguise, that prompted me to, before I had walked out the threshold, 30 seconds after this thing happened, I had even realized then, that's it. The time is now. I feel this. I can sense this. I'm meant to start my own business, and I will. I walked out of the last place that had employed me to run their wine program on a December 12th, and I was soft open by late April of the very next year, so just about 5 months, and I was officially grand hard opened on May 1st of that year. So from concept and idea and inspiration until actually being open and transacting business was a little bit less than 6 months, which is pretty amazing that I was able to pull that off. I personally don't necessarily take to a lot of red tape and bureaucracy and the trappings of the modern world and all of the sort of things you have to do to start a business. But I had a little bit of help and I had determination and I got through it. So I would say to anyone who feels like, oh, I hate paperwork, I hate this, I hate that, I don't want to deal with all this stuff. I'd rather just, fill out tax forms and fill out a W-4 and then work for somebody else. It's much easier. Well, yes, it is in the beginning. But you'll never be your own person. And I now am, so I'm very grateful for that blessing in disguise.
Has it changed your relationship with wine at all, having so much responsibility around it? For example, if you're working for somebody, you get to go around and talk wine all day with wealthy people to sell it to them. I mean,
I still get to do that. I still get to taste as often as I ever had to, because that is a huge part of running a wine program. You've got to be the gatekeeper, so to speak, and constantly taste, which to an untrained eye looks like, oh, he's not even working, he drinks for a living.
Yeah.
Screw that guy. So someone else in another department in a place that you might work for someone else will misunderstand and consequently resent what it is you do, brutishly, foolishly, not understanding what it takes to be a good guardian for wine. You've got to reject 9 for every one you bring into the store.
that makes sense.
Most wine made in this world is poor wine, and there's various reasons for that. But ultimately, I get to still do that, except I'm my own man and no one's breathing down my neck. And you can't put a
the
price
freedom.
on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering though. I mean, you have more skin in the game now, and is that? I mean, do you absolutely love it? Versus like if you went in and nobody bought a bottle that day because you presented all the wine, but no one wanted wine that day.
All right.
Versus you're at your shop, and if someone doesn't walk through the door, is it worth it? Because
2 things. It was a little nerve-wracking at first, but I was debt-free at month 9 of operating the business.
Wow.
fantastic.
That I thought was a good accomplishment. So I was grateful for that. I actually was in the black within my first year, which is amazing. Not very much, but I was. But also, forgive me, the second part of your question again.
Well, just the difference between if no one buys wine, but you're working for
so
somebody,
yes.
it's no skin off your back.
So I
But if
quit.
you're
That's
running a
true.
shop,
Except for maybe you're worried you'll be let go or
Right.
something because they can't afford you anymore. But
they're like, why didn't you hit your wine quota?
so if I have a dismally slow day, I've come to realize that it could well be predicated on poor weather, a holiday, something that doesn't even occur to me. You'll never know why. You'll rack your brain going crazy if you try to figure out why. But I learned quickly on that there are slow business days and unexpectedly blessed business days, and you never know which is going to happen. There have been occasional days where I haven't had a single customer. That's rare, thank goodness, but sometimes that happens. And I've learned to realize that you mustn't look at it day by day by day. Otherwise, it'll be a metaphorical roller coaster and you'll be sick to your stomach and high and low and high and low. But if you look at it month by month, that is a much healthier way to do it, and I've never had a bad month yet.
That's
I've
awesome.
had relatively slow months, but never a bad month.
That's amazing.
I have a question that kind of goes to both of you, because if you didn't know, Nathan works as a tobacconist at the Rec here and is entry level
And bartender.
and bartender and an entry level
Extraordinaire.
sommelier, because he's trained with Trevor a little bit.
I wouldn't say I'm a sommelier.
I said entry level, like you're.
He's ready to pass his intro to SOM exam with
Yeah.
a couple more weeks of hard grinding, whether you know it or not, which is a good accomplishment. And then you're well on your way to becoming a sommelier if you pass
He's not
the
a
next
stranger
level.
to wine, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, very true.
And so what I was wondering is, they say do what you love and you'll never work in a day. But for those of us who choose to do what we love for work and work our asses off, has it changed your relationship to tobacco when it becomes the bottom line of you are constantly around it, you're constantly trying to sell it to people, you're constantly explaining it? Is it harder to enjoy tobacco or wine when it is so part of your life? You're not clocking in, clocking out anymore. Now your passion is every day, all day, and is that a blessing still?
Overall, I would say yes. It is absolutely still a blessing because I do still love tobacco and fine spirits and all of that stuff. I would absolutely say that my relationship with tobacco has changed because I was smoking maybe twice a week prior to working at the Racketeer. But after working there for a while and, getting the trust of Paul and smoking through samples to see, is this worth bringing in? It's like the amount of time that I actually get to smoke what I want to smoke is very little. It happens genuinely twice a month. And people ask me like, oh, what's your favorite cigar right now? And I'm like, I've not had a chance to smoke what might be my favorite cigar in like a while, but I think you'd love this. So the relationship has changed just in that I don't always have the freedom to smoke what I want. Like I have the ability to go and like grab a cigar. Like I want to smoke this, but I don't have the time or I've got other things I need to smoke.
Yeah, and you have to keep your palate clean of that cigar so you can taste this cigar.
Exactly.
You can't be sampling stuff if you've had like 3 cigars you like and then you're lighting up one.
Exactly. But the part where it's still absolutely a blessing for me is I am still passionate, and the enjoyment of the job is not, making the sale. It's giving people something that they're going to love and enjoy and hopefully get them excited about tobacco, whether that's cigars or pipe.
That makes a lot of sense, Nathan. Trevor, do you have anything to add to that?
For my own part, I find that, and Nathan alluded to this, being one of the gatekeepers, one of the guardians of what comes into the shop or doesn't, makes it seem like work on one level. And he seldom, by his own admission, gets to smoke what he wants to sit down and smoke. But think about the plus side of that. The positive of that is that he's exposed to a variety that he never would otherwise if he wasn't in the industry.
Yeah.
So he might not finish the stick. He might only smoke a small portion of it, but he might be smoking 20 different cigars per week, which will actually in turn enable him to find his future favorites.
Yeah, and won't that strengthen his palate too? Because he'll have experience.
Because of a frame of
range.
reference and basis for comparison, it further strengthens his palate.
Yeah.
And the same is true in wine. Cigars are analogous to wine in that way.
That's why you still try a box wine every once in a while.
Oh, God forbid. There's actually one or two box wines out there that are drinkable now, and that was certainly not the case 10 years ago. But generally, by and large, they're not good. But when my wife and I are at a nice restaurant and I pour over their wine list and choose something that I really want to drink, that is a rare thing. Mm-hmm. And maybe if we're at home, I open up something from my own personal stash and drink it, and that's something that I want to drink. But for the most part, I'm just sampling sometimes 30, 40 wines in a day if all the reps are coming by for tasting appointments.
Yeah.
And most of those are going to be things I choose not to buy. But there'll be 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 gems scattered in among them that I'm like, wow, this is awesome. I'm buying this for the wine club, or I'm buying this for one of my tastings, or I'm buying this for the shelf, or I'm buying one of this very expensive thing just for myself to take home and have in my own collection.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's awesome that both of you are embracing the blessings that come with it because, I mean, like me, I love what I do, and I'm really good at what I do, if you're watching.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, I mean, whether it's media or just business strategy these days, it's the same as like nerding out over something, like a movie I really like with somebody. And talking about my industry is a treat, even though it's work. And that's the nice part is all of our jobs are social jobs where we get to nerd out over our favorite thing.
Cheers to that.
Yeah.
All day long.
Cheers. Absolutely.
And yeah, I just love it. It's a good world to be in when you can be in business and do what you love and then build upon it because you learn so much more as you're continuing on. Another kind of whiny topic. You've mentioned how much travel you get to do or how that's enhanced your exposure to wines. If anyone here listening out of the four of you haven't been to one of his classes, we call them classes, they're tastings, but he teaches you where the wine is from. He teaches you what grapes, the things, I don't know, he knows, but it's really, really, really interesting. And how many countries have you been to? Like, do you visit wineries when you're abroad? I know you're a world traveler.
I do visit wineries when I'm abroad, but as a general rule, I don't. I travel for different reasons, for culture, history, architecture, adventure, food, wine, cultural contextual resets, if you will, enhancing, and I'll speak to this in a bit, just the things that would otherwise at home be mundane, but they're not, because they're in so radically a different setting that it feels as though you're doing them for the first time again. Like you're a teenager. I call this travel theory. It means a great deal to me, and I travel for that reason. But yes, much of the world, probably a sixth of the countries of this world are important wine-producing nations. And a lot of the ones that you'll want to visit anyway really are, so that's a good thing. And I do sometimes visit wineries when I travel. But wine itself is figurative travel. Wine itself is metaphorical travel, because when you taste a wine, you are transported in a figurative way to the place where the grapes were grown, the terroir of that place, which is in part why I named my store Terroir, Fine Wine. And I could talk about that if you want me to. But wine itself is also history, geography, art, science, civilization, culture in a bottle. Yeah. And it is so in an abstract way. So wine is liquid philosophy, if you like. And philosophy, I assure you, is the study of human nature. Any other philosophy that doesn't accomplish that is a vain philosophy. And the study of human nature is synonymous with travel, because you cannot do one without the other if you do them right. So that's what wine is. It's not just an alcoholic beverage. As much as I love spirits, as much as I love beer, they don't hold a candle, so to speak, to wine, because only wine is philosophy, art, science, history, geography, and everything else. There's a reason why it's the most celebrated and lauded beverage of this world. And what I've spoken of is just part of it. The complexity and the nuance of this beverage, there's something quite biblical about it, I assure you, that something can be fermented from grapes, and grapes alone, and not just table grapes, but wine grapes, Vitis vinifera species grapes, will, for some reason, and science doesn't understand to this day why, but when fermented, chemical reactions will take place, and this will wind up tasting and smelling like hundreds of different things that are anything and everything but grapes. You can ferment strawberry juice into alcohol. You can ferment apple juice into alcohol. They don't do it. No other fruit does. Only wine grapes.
Fascinating.
And really quick, sorry, I'm sure you're about to go into something, but I think even just what you said, and I spoke about it earlier, but you just actually did it. The three of us all have this, where we're passionate about what we do, and it comes out when you actually get to talk about that thing. And at least for myself, I don't always get to, go down the rabbit hole and spend an hour and a half talking to people about tobacco. But that is, and I know I'm going back around to it, but that is, I think, the biggest blessing of being in something that you love. No matter how niche or wide, broad stroke, having that passion, having people come to you and want to learn is such a gift. And being able to share that, and, like the three of us, I'll be honest, I'm not as well spoken as you, Trevor, but it's like, I'm good enough. But having the words to explain not just this tastes good, but here's why, and here's the next level, is incredible. That is the biggest gift one person can share to another, is your passion for something. And I think that it is so obvious, Trevor, when you talk about wine, how that comes through and how much wine truly means to you and to your life.
Well, here's to infectious enthusiasm about what we do, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to
Cheers.
that. All right. So I'm super conflicted because, one, what you just said was really good, and I had something to say, but I actually forget, so that's okay. I want to go back to a couple minutes ago when you were saying that wine is history. Wine is... Now, I think the common man would know what you mean, but can you go a little more in depth about that? Like how it is, those things? Because you said it very poetically, and I think that people might not grasp the fact that it's poetic to say it that way, but you actually mean it. Like history, wine was in the Bible,
And well before.
and when you said those, if you remember everything you said, I would love just a little bit more, because I think it's fascinating.
Well,
when you think about it, this historical beverage, which feels like a sin to call it that, this thing,
Yeah. So let me correct myself. Not before, because the Bible spans from the beginning until 2,000 years ago. So yeah, there was no wine before the beginning. But from the time we were ousted from the garden, there was probably wine almost that week, I would guess. Certainly a very long time ago. So both on micro and macro levels, wine is history. On the macro level, and both in the abstract, the long arc of history since it became known to man, probably through a happy accident, that anything with sugar can be fermented, and it then transforms into alcohol and gives you a funny little feeling.
Have you ever researched like the first early
There were no written records, so it's not
record
a
of
thing
wine?
easily
It
researched.
was,
Yeah.
which is amazing, actually.
But almost more fascinating is wine being history on a micro level, meaning that in each respective place where wine is grown, and it's a very circumscribed set of places in this world. Latitude is the most important thing that plays a very important role, so that there are two bands or belts that wrap around both the northern and the southern hemisphere where wine can be grown. But even within those latitudinal bands, there are only very few places whose perfect microclimate, based on a host and a variety of different factors, will enable wine to be made in world-class fashion. Wine grapes are very finicky. But on a micro level, for each of those respective places, you can go back and say, unless you're talking about the cradle of civilization in the ancient world, certainly in Europe, where world-class wine first began, you can go back and say, well, wine, we know through records, whether they be writ on tablet or papyrus or on parchment or on anything else, even from, in some ways, undergirded by oral tradition, wine began in this place at this time. And these grape varieties we now know through genetic analysis at the university level at UC Davis and other places in the world that take wine, viticulture, and enology seriously. These grape varieties were used. And these blends, through long trial and error, were arrived upon and arrived at. And this style of wine has been made here for this long, and these innovations happened at this time. And so take just at random Châteauneuf-du-Pape in the southern Rhône Valley in the south of France, along the banks of the Rhône River, outside of Avignon, France. Châteauneuf-du-Pape loosely translates, quite literally, from the French as the new house of the Pope. And there was a period of history some centuries ago where there was a pope in exile who was contesting against the pope in the Vatican, and both claimed legitimacy and so forth. The other set up his court at Avignon, France, and this wine was made in honor of him, or the few of them that existed during this period of decades, if my history in this instance is serving me well. So this is a blend that allows over 10 grapes to be blended into it, but 3 of them are principal, and that is Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvèdre, so-called GSM wines. GSM-style blends are now made all around the world, in Australia, in California, in Washington State, and elsewhere. And there's a long tradition of how these wines are made. French wine law to this day is very strict about adhering to them and protecting them. And it is one of the more celebrated wines that even translates into pop culture. I'm no Beastie Boys fan, although a lot of people are, but they mentioned the wine Châteauneuf-du-Pape in one of their silly, crass songs.
That's a lot of history. Is that part of like becoming a sommelier, or is this history
very
that
much.
you've researched on your own that you were curious about?
Well, I could have done it on my own, but to become a sommelier, you have to do it whether you will or you won't.
Okay.
There are three components to the exam.
Can you explain what's required to become one? Like, what are you studying?
You've got to first
it's not
pass.
just drinking wine.
The Court of Master Sommeliers is the most important governing body that issues credentials for sommeliers. There are others, but they're not as respected. So the Court of Master Sommeliers, CMS. The first thing you have to do is pass your Intro to Somm exam, in which case you're considered on the launch pad, if you will, to then make your attempt at becoming a Somm. That's what I mentioned earlier that Nathan is ready for, or almost ready for even now. Once you pass that, you can apply to sit for your exam for levels 2, 3, and 4 sommelier. Level 4 is a master sommelier, otherwise known as, and there are only less than 400 of them alive on planet Earth. That tells you how difficult that is. But for all three of them, 2, 3, and 4, which is called Certified, Advanced, and Master Level Somm, you've got to sit through a theory exam, which is a lengthy written test. You have to do a blind taste, which is as it implies, and you have to do a service portion of the exam where you are serving one of the few living master sommeliers and his several imaginary guests, and you are presenting wine, going through all couple dozen proper steps of wine service without error, while he's firing nerve-wracking questions off at you and telling you things about how he wants the wine served that you best remember and not forget. There are no trick questions, and there's no him trying to trip you up, other in that he demands great attention to detail, if you like, and promptitude and professionalism and exactitude, more importantly, in service. And if you pass all three of those, and everyone, myself included, who took the exam, sat around for hours waiting to hear the results, wandering around, in my case it was the Bellagio in Las Vegas, drinking cocktails and throwing money down one-armed bandits, saying to myself, I know I failed, I know I failed, I know I failed. In my case, turns out I didn't, thank goodness. And of course, there's usually about a 40 to 50% pass rate out of everyone who takes the exam, who had already passed the Intro to Somm exam. And every single one of them generally second guesses him or herself and thinks that they failed until they hear that they didn't. Yeah. Or sadly, they hear that they did.
Well, it sounds like
and
a
then
really
they can
tough
sit
test.
for it again. I suppose it's tough. I like to think I probably squeaked by the skin of my teeth, but I've learned a great deal about wine since then, and I have forgotten a great deal about wine since then.
So why do people think that the older the wine, the better it is?
It's a misconception promulgated by Hollywood and, a little bit of wine knowledge.
Is there any merit to it?
Only generally. So it's a matter of...
because you're in awe of something that's so old?
It's Dunning-Kruger.
Yeah.
The basic academic principle that the less you know about something, the more you think you know about it, because the world of that sphere of knowledge seems so small to you because you have such a poor frame of reference for it. So if you hear that old wine is good and you saw that on TV, then that's what you're going to think. Every wine has a best by date, if you will, and it varies widely and wildly. Only Madeira will go upwards of 2 centuries. No other wine in the world will. It's almost impossible for a non-fortified or non-dessert wine to go upwards of a century or more, a single century. Even the finest, most coveted wines in this world and most costly and desired and celebrated wines of this world, depending on the strength of the vintage, which is predicated 90% on the weather that year in that exact place, will go even 50, 60, 70 years. And probably 99.5% of wine made in this world is not meant to age beyond even 10 years.
So the quality might go down, but the rarity and the expense goes up because as it gets older and older, it's more and more rare.
Some white wines are at their best the instant they're released. Some white wines will continue to improve for a year or two, or even a few more if it's a rare, fine white Burgundy, for instance.
Yeah.
Red wines will generally reach their pinnacle of greatness a between 2 and 25 years after they're released. And if you're in doubt about whether or not you have one of the 25-year ones, you don't have one of the 25-year ones. It's important to note that wine should be stored in a cool, dark place. If you don't have a proper wine storage temperature unit, you should store it at the bottom of your closet or under your bed where it's as cool as it's going to be in the house and dark. Never store a red wine in a refrigerator for a few various reasons that I won't go into, but just don't. White wine, if it's going to be drunk within 9 months, you can keep that in a regular refrigerator, no problem. Yeah, if you err on the side of caution, even I as a wine professional err on the side of caution. I might have a bottle in my possession that I suspect is going to be, maybe it's a 2016 of something, and I suspect it's going to be at its best somewhere between 2025 and 2028. You rest assured I'm going to drink it around 2025 just to be on the safe side.
Interesting. So the fanfare over it, all right, I'm just going to lean into it. What's the oldest wine you've ever tried?
It was an 1840 Madeira.
Did it taste like dirt, or was it good?
It would have tasted like dirt to Joe Schmo who drinks kokanee.
That wasn't the one that you had at the Racketeer, was it?
It was.
Oh, okay. So then I've also had that one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Pretty
I was
awesome.
there for that event.
Pretty
That was awesome.
Everyone got an ounce of that wine at the end of the evening. There was other wine flowing throughout the night, and cigars and food, as was catered by Defiant Barbecue. As I recall.
Would you say that the half-life of that had passed as far as the best time to drink it? But
Possibly.
But it was still enjoyable.
Possibly,
because
but
of
it
the
still
rarity.
clung on because of the nature of Madeira wine, which is probably
Right.
too long to get into right now. Madeira is it's a fortified wine. It's like port or sherry, but very different in other ways.
There's something cool about tasting a piece of history.
There very much is. But the oldest regular, if you will, table wine that I've ever tasted that was non-fortified, non-dessert wine was in 1945. It was a first growth 1945 Chateau Latour that I myself sold. It was, I wasn't yet my own man in business. I worked for someone else. It was a $10,000 bottle. On my own authority, I knocked it down to $8,000 to sell it to them. I think I garnered some ire from the higher ups when I did that, but I felt I was safe to do that on my own authority because they wouldn't have bought it otherwise. They were willing to spend $8,000 on it, not 10. Also, they had spent probably $70,000 in wine at the place over the last 18 months. So I thought, you know what, if anyone deserves a discount on this that isn't going to hurt the house, but it's going to bless them, it is these people.
Yeah.
And here's how generous
thinking.
they were. One glass went to the CEO of the company that bought it. One glass was shared, almost a glass, was shared among a few of the other executives. A couple ounces were poured to a couple of the head servers at that restaurant. And then myself and the other sommelier got almost a glass each.
Wow. That's actually insane.
Yeah, so this guy spent $8,000 on essentially just shy of 2 glasses of wine.
Wow.
Pretty awesome.
Holy cow. That's actually incredible.
Yeah.
That's
story.
really incredible. To think that not even in like the financial, like having $8,000 to spend for basically 2 glasses of wine, but like to think that, you know, that wine basically saw the end of World War II to whenever it was served. That is crazy. And that is actually like, that's one of the things that cigars don't have that, but pipes do, because pipes can be quite old. Like I've got one from the 1940s. That was my grandfather's. And so it's like, that's the history that is just so cool with these kinds of industries, is where when you go into it and you learn about it and you see how it expands out into life, how it's not just some accessory or some pleasurable item. I think those are the moments that really grab people.
Yeah.
Like that's an incredible thing that you got to drink that.
It's so cool.
I'll remember it till I can remember no other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember what I was going to say that was tied into what you were saying. So both of your industries have a wide range of people who appreciate the thing that you're selling. How do you handle people who are at different levels? So there are some people who appreciate wine very much, but don't appreciate wine in what we would say is the right way necessarily, which isn't the best way of thinking about it. But I know that that's kind of the knee-jerk reaction that some people would have, is like, oh. And I know it exists in the cigar industry.
It does.
There are cigars that are not what you like to sell or what you do, but how do you feel about people who still appreciate the thing that we all appreciate so much, but aren't at that level yet? Do you think there's hope for them? How do you go about that?
All right. May I take this one first and then throw it to you?
Yeah.
I say, and I don't know that the same can be said about tobacco, but maybe to a lesser extent it can. But I say that everyone in this world, with few or no exceptions, is a wine lover, whether they know it or not. Now, most people, as I poetically say, will lay their bones in the grave never having realized they were a potential wine lover all along. Or other people will begin their journey on this path that we all must begin. I remember when I knew nothing about wine. You start at square one, and you can take it as far as you want to. Some people will only go a few steps along this journey and still drink the very wine that unsophisticated 21-year-olds in college drink. Mm-hmm. Other people
No, sorry.
Other people will go a little farther and come to realize that their palates are evolving in spite of themselves, whether they want them to or not, to the tune of they will wind up liking things that they used to dislike and wind up disliking things that they used to like as their palate becomes more sophisticated.
I've seen that with tobacco as well.
You see, same thing. It can be analogous to tobacco. So I meet everyone who comes into my shop where they are. I'll ask them a few questions, and I'll quickly discern where I think they are on their wine journey, and I'll recommend things to them accordingly. But what I love doing most of all is helping people further along on the wine journey. I will generally say that all roads lead to the old world, meaning when you start off drinking wine, you're going to want to drink New World wine. You're going to want to drink Argentine Mendoza Malbec. You're going to want to drink Australian Shiraz. You're going to want to drink Washington and California Merlot. You're going to want to drink oversweet Rieslings. You're going to want to drink the sort of things that a newly beginning on its journey palate will appreciate best. Simple, one-dimensional, fruit-forward, easy-to-appreciate things.
Yeah.
But the more you go, the more you will, if you stay on the road long enough, you will end up in Europe. And you will end up swearing by Italian, French, and Spanish and other wines. And you will drink less and less and less American wine, Southern Hemisphere wine. I'm not saying these are unworthy wines. They're world-class, gorgeous wines. Mm-hmm. I'm simply saying that if anyone stays on this path long enough, without exception, all roads lead to the old world. And if someone never gets there, it's because they simply truculently, recalcitrant, feet dug into the sand, refuse to go further on the path.
Real quick before Nathan takes it.
Yeah.
How many people have you seen start at the lowest rung of appreciation for wine and
Hundreds.
end up at that point
Hundreds.
where they are actively seeking out
Hundreds.
European wines? Things
I love to convince people who think they hate white wine that they don't. I love to convince
and
people.
then you transition them to red.
I love to convince people who think they hate red wine that they don't, allergies notwithstanding.
Right.
I have a bit of a story here. So, Trevor, as we established, Trevor has been the person who has helped me in my wine journey. I started working at the Racketeer when I was freshly 21, and I knew nothing about wine. But one of the things that I found was I was just like, I don't like Chardonnay. I really don't like Chardonnay. And I think it was the last high-end wine tasting that we went to, me and my wife, where you had Chablis, I think it was. And that was the one that I was like, this one, actually pretty good. I still don't like most Chardonnays, but there are ones that I can actually enjoy.
You don't like overwrought Chardonnays that are sometimes referred to as the California style Chardonnay.
Yes, where they're big and buttery.
And I
gross.
understand that. So it was the perfect thing that I introduced an unoaked French Chardonnay to you.
It was phenomenal.
Nice.
I loved it.
Nice. Thank you.
But sorry. Yeah.
No, now it's you.
Oh, yeah.
It's to you now.
Yeah. So I think in a lot of ways you said what I would have said as far as like people come in, and if I don't know them, I don't know where they're at. I ask them, do you have things that you like? That's usually my opener. And they usually go, yes, I like X, Y, and Z thing. And I go, oh, okay, cool. Well, if you like that, do you want to try something similar, or do you want to try something a little bit different that might push you? Mm-hmm. And one way or the other, I go down the tree of whatever it might be. But if they say no, I go, okay, well, do you have any experience with tobacco whatsoever? Even though it is not really comparable, even cigarettes, because that gives me an idea, does this person have any sort of a nicotine tolerance? Because if they do, and they say, well, I like my coffee black. Well, okay, rather than starting you on a Connecticut, I can start you on a Habano, or maybe even a Connecticut broadleaf, or perhaps a lighter Maduro. And a lot of it is just, meeting these people where they're at, because I want them to enjoy themselves and find the things that I have found to love about tobacco. Mm-hmm. And if someone's like, I've never smoked anything in my life, and I go, well, here's the strongest stick we have in the shop, they're probably going to get sick, for one. And for another, they're going to be like, that was terrible. And I could have just turned them off from tobacco forever. There are people who smoke things that I would say are honestly not worth smoking. But that's kind of where I have to take myself out of it and be like, are they enjoying themselves? Yes. Mm-hmm. That's what matters, at least when it comes to cigars.
Here's a question for both of you as well. How hard is it to be kind to those people that are not quite there yet in their appreciation with the quality of
very
things?
easy,
but also
very easy.
But also not carry what that they would want you to carry, because then you could serve them as well.
That's the harder part.
Yeah.
So the first part of your question, it's very easy if they're humble.
Yes.
If someone comes in humble to my shop, I will bend over backwards to embrace them and give them something that I think they'll very much enjoy. Mm-hmm. If someone comes off spouting, especially arrogantly spouting off misconceptions, or worse, asking if I carry X, Y, and Z garbage grocery store wine, and then being...
Do you have any barefoot?
Exactly. Well, and then being haughty about the fact that I don't. I hate to say it, I'm a business owner. I will gently put that person in his place. But if someone comes in humbly and says, or even asks for a bad wine, something that I would never carry in 1,000 years, I refuse to carry, I'll say, well, no, I don't really carry that. I have reasons for it, but let me show you something that I think you'd like that might actually challenge your horizons and bring you into the next step on this wine.
And that's something that both shops, the Racketeer and Terroir, have going for them, where it's like, no, sorry, but for $3 to $5 more, like, I will tell you, I will swear to you, this will blow your mind.
Well, so
if you're at all in the realm of appreciating the industries for what they
absolutely are. For one, Trevor, I think you basically hit the nail on the head. You were spot on. It is much easier when people come to you and go like, well, I don't know anything, but I'd like to learn. Well, then awesome. The doors are wide open. Come in. Mm-hmm. I'm here. This is what I literally get paid to do and what I look forward to doing.
But when they get mad at you.
When they get mad at me, it's like, well, we don't carry what are referred to as legacy brands in cigars because
that's a good way of putting it, legacy brands.
Yeah, well, because they've been around for 30 plus years, some of them.
Apply that to legacy media and it'll make more sense.
Yeah, but it's like they've been around for a long time, and now these people are just riding off. Well, the brands that is are riding off of the the name recognition, but they're putting out trash. And so when people are like, I only smoke X brand, it's like, okay, well, I don't carry those because their business practices are anti-brick and mortar, and that's why we don't carry them. So I have this. You said you liked this specific line from that company, and I think it will be comparable to what you're used to, and honestly, it's often not $3 to $5 more, depending on the brand that they say they like. Sometimes it's actually cheaper to go for a boutique or small batch brand. Like, you know, I'll name drop them. It's Cohiba. Cohiba is one of those brands where their starting cigar is like $17. And people come in saying, "Oh, I only smoke new make Cohibas," and I'm like, I'm going to give you something that is $12 that is going to knock your socks off. Like, there's a lot that there's a lot of this that just comes down to how you approach it,
Yeah.
and how you do it. Because even if you don't agree with them and they're arguably wrong, if you come at it from a place of, well, you know, they're wrong, but they don't know any better, it gets a lot easier, and you can oftentimes change their mind. Whereas if you get pissed at them, like, well, no, you're a fucking idiot. Like, why would you even believe that? They start to shut down, their walls go up, and it's over for you. Whether, you know, from a business standpoint, you lose the sale, but from a, you know, like, just person who cares about quality tobacco products or quality wine, you might have just turned them off from possibly expanding their mind to this maybe forever.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's an important, it's a delicate situation, and it's important to do it in that way, because both of your guys' stores that you work at it's all boutique stuff, but the barrier of entry is still low. There's options within an affordable amount. It's not just about the money, but I love what I love about terroir wine and the Racketeer is, if anyone is interested at all, it's the perfect place to get into it. And that's why your guys' attitudes towards people who are basically just ignorant, it's perfect to bridge that gap. You know, if they go through the doors, then they're gonna have they have every possibility to have a good time. It's up to them. So I think we should talk about this wine real quick.
Yeah.
Take a swig of this whiskey. We're coming up on the end. That camera's already dead, so that's our wide angle. So now we just have our close-ups. Hopefully,
Hello,
those phones
close-ups.
are
When
going.
did that thing die? Recently?
It was the beep. Okay. It was like in the middle of Nathan's thing, he said.
Oh, okay.
That's okay, though.
That's fine.
So it's just going to be close-ups on each of us for this last little bit. But is there a tiny bit left for a sip?
There is.
Let's all get a last sip of this.
And see what breathing has done
Yes.
to this wine.
It softened it a lot.
Good. As that will.
And Trevor, thank you for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Nathan, thank you for co-hosting.
Yeah,
Cheers, boys.
absolutely. Cheers, guys.
So we're going to see what it's saying now. I'm almost getting...
I almost feel like the tannins have gotten a little bit softer. Like somehow softer but more grippy.
I'm getting almost some kind of rhubarb notes now. I'm getting some ripe berry and currant notes, and almost a little bit of forest floor, a little bit of a brambly thing that isn't stemmy but just earthy.
I was gonna say it feels a little bit more floral, and the fruitiness has come up a bit.
All right, good.
Those aren't the fancy words you guys said.
No,
but
fruitiness is very much a
it
trend.
actually kind of went into. I compare what I was gonna say to what you guys said, and I feel like we're saying the same thing. I just don't have the words.
No, it has the wine. This wine has breathed, and consequently opened up and improved over this hour. So that is good. Are we going to analyze this fine
Yes,
Elijah
this
Craig?
whiskey. This is the Elijah Craig small batch. We picked this up. It was featured in TBD Talks earlier. But cheers, guys! Thanks again for being
Cheers,
here.
y'all.
It's not bad.
I'm not gonna lie. After the wine, all I taste is the rye and the vanilla from the oak barrels.
Yeah,
That's literally it.
Thank goodness. There's a reason why we drank the wine entirely first before this. This would obliterate the wine.
Yeah.
You couldn't go back.
Yeah, by comparison, this would overpower the wine. You couldn't go back.
But
It's a very weedy wine. And I mean that because like you can taste the cereal grain.
Oh, the weedy whiskey.
Yeah. Or sorry, whiskey. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know why I
They
said
both start
wine.
with W, but they are very different.
They are very different. The whiskey is very wheat forward.
Yeah, not bad. Josh usually nerds out. I want you to try to analyze this like you would a wine.
On the spot again. All right. So you can't really be analyzed as a wine would be, but I'll try to
Obviously.
analyze.
Way different. But so my theory is that you spend so much of your time, and Nathan could do this too, really recognizing notes in your palate of wine, and then he does tobacco, and we both cross over and stuff. But I'm wondering, can you guys try to pick out different things in this now that we've obliterated our wine palate? That
You mean just our palate?
Well, our palate catered to wine is now gone, but now we can embrace the whiskey palate.
There's I'm almost getting a whiff of sandalwood in this. Is anyone else picking
Yeah.
up on that?
Mm-hmm.
It's more on the finish. It's almost like an effervescence within your mouth. It's a weird thing going on, but yeah.
When you say the finish, is that like where it's in the back of your tongue?
No,
no.
it refers to time.
There is something on the back
Yeah.
of the tongue that's very distinct.
That's the back
And
of your
that's
tongue.
the-
But finish refers to time. There's a front, middle, and finish of a cigar or a wine or a whiskey.
Yeah.
Well, I find that on the back of the tongue is where the longest lasting taste tends to just kind of sit. But sandalwood's how I would describe that, though. It's
No,
very-
absolutely.
Well, no, I wouldn't have, because I don't even know what sandalwood is. But the word sounds like the taste that I'm experiencing.
All right,
So-
good.
You know, that's kind of a
Here.
fair point. I never thought about that, but sandalwood is not only the name, but almost a descriptor of it.
No, I just think of sandals on a beach scraping the sand on the wood, and for some reason, that taste is exactly.
So think about balsa wood or a delicate cedar or something like that. I'm picking up notes reminiscent of woods of this sort, the aromatic, botanical smelling woods.
It would be too strong for a lot of people, but it's also it isn't like a bad whiskey where, like if I went down to one of the bars on the street and got like Jack and Coke.
There's almost
Jack
a-
it is, No, there's
never,
more, there's
never.
more to it. Like it's actually, but it is strong and it does hit. And then I like the way it dances across your tongue after the initial drink, the sandalwood and the other things.
I can see that. Yeah. Yeah, I like a lot of Elijah Craig stuff. I haven't been the biggest fan of just their main line, which I'm guessing, is this just the regular?
This is small batch.
Oh, it is, really?
Yeah.
Actually, isn't all their mainline stuff called small batch?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, you almost got me. But their mainline stuff, it's still good. There are other baseline whiskeys that I think are better, but it's still pretty good. I've had worse.
Pretty. I've been watching Curb Your Enthusiasm a lot, so
I haven't seen an
Larry
episode in a
David's
while.
in my head, and it's just so. I hear it's good.
Hey, we're at
Some
we're
of
at an
those
hour.
Some of those
Yeah.
are very funny.
We do have to wrap it up. Thanks, you guys, for being
Cheers,
here.
boys.
Cheers,
Thanks.
guys.
Good episode. Trevor, give me your shout outs. Oh, well, let's do Nathan first, since he's like a special co-host.
Guest.
So,
Yeah. My name is Nathan Erikellian. You can find me, for one, on the Racketeer socials, run by our very own Travis. But you can also find me at Tito Bruh on Instagram and
gotta
pretty
get
much
that
everything.
changed, bro.
I know I do. I'm working on it. But yeah, you can find me at Tito Bruh on Instagram and pretty much everything else.
awesome.
Yeah.
Trevor, take it away. That should be your camera. If
All
it's still
right.
charged.
Well, everyone, I'm Trever Treller. I am the owner and sommelier of Terroir Fine Wine in Coeur d'Alene. That's Terroir. You can find Terroir Fine Wine both on Instagram and Facebook. I conduct tastings every Thursday at 6. I do appreciate a call to let me know you're coming so I can reserve your seat for you. They're only $15, and I think you'll find it to be some of the finest $15 you ever spent. Everyone has a blast, or I bend over backwards to make it that way. And if you come in and tell me what it is you're after, or what you're serving, or what dinner party you're going to, or whatever the case is, and what your budget is, and I've got wines in every budget, I'll put the perfect thing in your hand, I promise.
Awesome. Well, good episode. Very I mean, usually we talk about business strategy or, you know, the motivation, that type of stuff. This is a very unique business episode, but I think it's really fun to spotlight a specific industry, to talk about wine and get to talk to a professional. And I really appreciate you guys coming out.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having
both.
us.
We'll see you guys next time
Yeah.
on Whiskey and
Cheers.
Business.
Cheers.
Cheers.